welcome to this webinar hosted by Parents Helping Parents in San Jose, California. We are collaborating on a series of webinars with Morrissey Compton Educational Center in Redwood City. The audience for these webinars is families whose students have learning differences and/or ADHD. With schools across the nation shut down, it's an optimal time period for us to be talking about today's subject, which is optimizing your home environment for online learning. I'm joined by Dr. Surina Basho, Ph.D. and Director of Research in Learning Differences. She's also the Executive Function Psychologist at Morrissey Compton. She has expertise in cognitive neuroscience, executive function, and learning differences. So she's a great person to be co-hosting this with. And let's move into our presentation. Let me introduce Dr. Surina Basho. Welcome, Surina.
Thank you so much, Marley. I'm really thankful to be able to be partnering with PHP, Parents Helping Parents, to bring this webinar to our audience. The reason why I actually wanted to do this webinar is because once things shifted very quickly for many of our students with now being at home for school, I had many questions from many parents and even current clients and their parents about how to set up the best home environment for online learning. And so that's going to be the focus of today's talk. We're going to go through the basics, but as Marley said, you can submit questions, and if we're able to stop or pause for them, we will, and I will do my best to answer them. We can also take questions at the end. And just to tell you a little bit more about Morrissey Compton Educational Center, as Marley said, we're located in Redwood City. We have been in practice for over 35 years. We are a nonprofit. We do everything from neuropsych, psychoeducational evaluations to treatment, mental health therapy, educational therapy, tutoring, so many things, and social programs, lots of groups as well. So we're a mighty, small but mighty place. So just wanted to give you a little bit of background if you're not familiar with Morrissey and Compton. So we're going to move on to the first slide. So our agenda today is about how do we set expectations and appropriate expectations for our students at home. How do we create a structured space for learning? And how do we establish schedules and routines? What are the best practices? And then we'll go into a little bit about ADHD and executive function difficulties in online learning and some tips around that. And then I'm going to share with you just some of my favorite resources that I use all the time that I think might be helpful for you if you're not already familiar with them. Okay, so number one, setting expectations. So setting expectations is about setting clear and appropriate expectations. So taking into account your child's age or what grade they're in, if they're in grade school, middle school, high school, this talk is geared towards those age ranges and grades the most today. And so having a family meeting to actually discuss the school expectations during this time, I know things have already changed very quickly, so some of you might already have done this. But if you haven't, this is a great way to start the conversation and to have a conversation with your child and say, just because school is not happening in person, we are still going to be doing school and learning at home. Now, this will vary for everybody. I have many different students and clients that have different setups. Some students are doing online streaming where the classes are actually being taught live streaming from the teachers. And then sometimes when they're doing that, the school day is actually shortened as well. So they might have a partial school day. And then I have other students who are not having live streaming. However, the teachers are giving them information through email or the online platforms of videos to watch, information to read, activities to do, and homework to do on their own. And then some students, from what I hear, also are having scheduled office visits online with their teachers while expecting them to also still do the work on their own independently. So there's a lot of different variation right now in what I'm seeing in my students. So I hope that we will touch on some things that will be helpful for each one of those situations. So again, having a family meeting to discuss the school expectations is very important to show that it is important that we are going to still be learning and going to school, even though we're doing it from home, and that we are going to reinforce this. What I recommend is that you keep the key expectations short. So sometimes I'll have parents say, well, I had a whole big list of expectations that we need to be doing during this time. And I had to say to them, we need to dial that back a little bit. It might be too overwhelming for many of our students. And so we want to be able to do ones that are key expectations. Of course, you can talk about expectations throughout different days. You can revisit them. You can even change or adjust them. But let's start with some basic ones. And we can go over some of those. On the right-hand side of my slide, it says class expectations, be respectful, listen to your teacher, be responsible. That's an example for what we do in the classroom, but we'll go through some examples of what we do at home. Write them down and display them in an area that everyone will see. So I really recommend either having it on big piece of paper, if you have any butcher paper at home, poster paper or poster board, or whiteboard. Those are all great examples. And if you don't, just a plain blank piece of paper and writing it down on there in big print will work just as well. And you put the expectations down and you post them. We talk about them, we write them down, we read them together, and we post them in a place that everyone sees. Also, for some of our students with executive function difficulties and ADHD, they might need to be reminded of the expectations more directly, and having a copy or having a different version in their bedroom, or if they're doing their online learning in their bedroom. So wherever they're doing their online learning, putting another copy up there for your student to be able to see it right in front of them. And also a recommendation is to meet once a week as a family to check in on expectations, if they're being met, if they need to be adjusted, if we were not realistic about our expectations and now we need to change them, or if we were realistic about our expectations, but our students maybe need more help doing the expectations and they might need some strategies to help them. So having those conversations once a week at a scheduled meeting as a family can be very helpful. Also having a family meeting where you can also discuss how everybody's feeling, if there's anything that they have on their mind or any projects they might want to be doing or support they might need. That is also a really great thing to do in these family meetings. So for example, here are some examples that you can use with the current situation of doing online learning at home. For instance, we wake up and do our morning routine before school starts. So we're going to get into that later on around schedules and routines. But the expectation is that we get up, we get dressed, we take our showers, or we do them at night. We make sure we're ready for school, just like we would if we were going into school in person. We leave our phone outside of the area that we are doing school in. So just like at school, most students are not allowed to have their phone out. Maybe they're allowed to have it in their pocket or their backpack, but they're not allowed to have it out in front of them during learning time. So the same expectation here. You can have students either, if they are able to self-regulate, which some students that I work with have a hard time with that, but if they are able to self-regulate, they can turn over their phone so they can't see the actual display, or they can put it outside of the room, which I do recommend, so that's not a temptation for the student. Also, parents can either ask to have them handed to them or have them the student put it directly into the communal area where everybody can see it during class time, during academic time. During school breaks, so for instance, many of my students are doing recess. They're doing recess with other students online. Some students are connecting that way, or they might be going outside to get some fresh air, might be playing inside the house. So break time is the same thing you would do at school. You play, you connect with others. It's not time to go onto video games. So for instance, that's an example of an expectation that would be put on your expectations list. And another one is we do our best effort and we focus the best we can during our online classes. So letting them know we still do expect your best effort here. We still do expect you to work on staying regulated, staying focused the best you can. And we'll go into some strategies later on that you can use if a student needs help with that. So next, it's about creating a structured space for learning. Very, very important. The physical space that the student is going to be learning. So sorry about that. It clicked back for me. So here we have examples on the right-hand side of pictures of a desk, a table. It does not have to be a desk. It can be just a table where the person has their laptop on the table. They have maybe some pencils, some basic things, but they're not going to have it cluttered. So some of my students, when they're working from home, even before the closing of the schools, I would ask them where they do their homework. And some of them would say on the floor, on their bed, out in the living room, on the couch. And I'd always say, well, is it possible to try to do it at a desk? Right now, that's more important than ever because our students are not in school in the classroom. They actually need that desk to kind of anchor them and to give them some structure and organization. So having the desk be clutter-free. So some of my students, they'll tell me, oh yeah, I have a desk. I have my Legos on it. I have all my different figurines on it. I have my cards on it. I have my drawings. They would not be using it as a space to do learning or to do work. And so if that is the case, that up till now, they did not have a clear surface, we want to make sure they have that clear surface. And if they do have a clear surface, that's great. Try not to have it be too cluttered with too many things on the table. Sometimes when we have too much on the table to look at, it can actually get us more distracted. It's important to figure out, and this is what I've been working with different parents on, if you should have the student be in their own room doing their online classes or out in a communal area. So I don't say one way or the other is the best for everyone. I think it varies in the situation. It varies in the student's own regulation. And it also varies if you have multiple kids at home. So I do have some clients, for instance, where the parents, I have told them to have them in separate rooms with separate desks. However, one of the things that we all agreed on in the expectations is that you keep the door open, it has to be open, and that the desk is facing away from the doorway so that the actual computer screen that's on the desk with the student, the parent can see as they walk by the door what's happening on that computer screen and what their child's doing. So I've literally, some parents have actually changed the angle of the desk so that the computer will be facing the open doorway. So those are some expectations, that we keep the door open. We're able, for the parents allowed and is able to see the computer while the student is learning and doing online learning. Also, involve the student in setting up their workspace. So some students, some parents, they're like, well, we're going to set it up for them and we'll just get it ready for them. And granted, I understand that. However, in many of my students with ADHD and executive function difficulties, it actually is a great experience modeling, learning to set up their own space with the parent or with somebody, or even on their own with the parent kind of checking in to make sure it makes sense how they're setting it up. So being able to put their own little touches on it can make it feel more like their own. And that's important right now. So, it's okay if they want to have their fun pencils or some stickers around on their table, or, different color stapler or things like that. It's okay to let them actually organize it and get into organizing it and get excited about that and motivated that this is my workspace and this is where I'm going to be learning. So that's very important as well. School materials. So this is not a total exhaustive list, but these are examples of materials that you want to have right on hand of where the student is. So for instance, they obviously have their laptop, their desktop, or an iPad. Do they need headphones? So sometimes if there's a lot going on in the background, you want to be able to have the student perhaps use headphones. Also, I want to actually, I'm going to pause for 1 second and I'm going to step back. Excuse me. I did not finish one point I wanted to make on this last slide. On this last slide, I talked about students' room versus kitchen or dining room. So we talked about briefly about if it's in the bedroom, in their own room, the door stays open, parents can check in, that they're, online and engaging in learning. Now, some students may not do well regulating themselves in their own bedroom. They might get distracted by the Legos over there. They might get distracted by the stuffed animals. They might get distracted by other fun video games or electronics around them, which would be great if we can remove those from the bedroom during learning time, which we'll talk about. So sometimes doing the actual online learning in a communal area. So again, a desk or a table. So for instance, a dining room table, a kitchen table. Now, I say that in terms of a caveat in the sense that if there's a lot of movement around them, like you as parents or other people in the house are moving around in the area they're sitting there and trying to learn and pay attention to the online learning, especially if it's live streaming, that may not be the best place for them. However, if it's not live streaming and it's self-directed learning, the communal area might be the best place to be at a desk or a dining room table or kitchen table, because there's somebody always around to help keep their attention moving. And that actually might not be a bad idea. So again, it varies by the situation and by the student's regulation abilities and the setup of the school for online learning. So let's go back to school materials. Laptop, desktop, headphones, again, question of whether that needs to be there or not to block out other noise behind them. Also, if you have multiple students working on a table together, and there's some kind of online streaming or video that they're watching so that it doesn't disturb the other people, headphones make sense for that. Of course, computer chargers. I have so many students that before the schools had closed their doors for now, before they had done that, many of my students would actually struggle with having their laptops actually charged and doing a system around that. So now that they're going to be home, definitely having that charger right there, right by the desk table, wherever they have their laptop that they're learning, even plugging it in is important so they don't run out of juice. Of course, any school books that they have, any planners that they have, still we want them to have their planners and still write down the homework they have to do. Any school notebooks, folders, any binder paper, blank binder paper, blank plain paper, of course, pencils, pens, highlighters, sharpener. Calculator is very important. I have many of my students in high school, for instance, that use their phones for their calculator. And that's not the best way to use their phone, because although the phone can be a tool, if they struggle with using their phone and regulating themselves, going on their phone to go to the calculator might get them sidetracked into doing something else. So having a just plain calculator there for them to use, especially for the high school students, that would be good. A calendar. We are going to be going day to day with not in our typical routines of going to places. And it's going to be harder for kids to track what day it is, especially kids with executive function difficulty. So having a calendar, even in my office, I always have a full calendar right there, a 12-month, calendar each month, right in front of my students. It's literally right in front of them where they're sitting. So they have to see it. And also I point it out to them. And by the way, you can also in the mornings say, hey guys, make an announcement. Today is Thursday, March 19th, just so we all are on the same page of what today is. So doing that and helping them be aware of the days passing is really helpful, especially for the little ones. A whiteboard is fabulous if you have one, a chalkboard, whatever you have, for students to be able to write down right above their desk, perhaps, what is my schedule for today? What am I supposed to be doing for my tasks today? Those can be really great. And if you don't have that, you can do it on blank pieces of paper as well and just, tape it onto the wall. It's great if a student can have access to a printer, because then they can print out materials from online. There's a lot of information that's being given to students right now through their classes online, and a lot of reading. And yes, we have students who do reading on the computer. However, with so much more, higher levels of reading being expected right now from our learners and self-directed learning, it might make it easier if they have printed out versions. Maybe not for everything, but for areas that are important. I really think that can help, especially kids with learning differences. So let's go on to establishing schedules and routines. And if I'm going too fast, please let Marley know through the Q&A. I do tend to talk a little fast, so I can always slow down if you need me to. Okay, so here is an example of a self-directed learning schedule. For instance, one of my students who's in high school right now, they are not doing streaming online classes for them. Instead, the teachers are communicating via email and online of telling them what to go do. So go read this article, go answer and do this homework, go watch this video. And so my student didn't have any idea of how to organize himself. And so what I said is, we need to do our schedule day to day exactly, if as close as we can to how we would do it at school. So mimicking the school schedule. So for instance, you see on the right-hand side, it has high school student, 8 to 8:45 would be jazz band. So during that time, he's going to be working with his jazz instrument and practicing during that time, like he would in class. Then he's going to take a 10-minute break, because usually they are switching from class to class during that time, but also because they do need that, because they're going to be in one space all day long. And I do want them to take breaks, walk outside of their room for a few seconds, come back in. We can talk about what a good break looks like in a little bit. And then the next one would be economics. So 9:55 to 10:15, I'm going to do economics. Now, this is a very detailed schedule, and I totally know that. So please do not get overwhelmed expecting all of your children to follow this type of schedule. However, with this student who's in high school and has ADHD and executive function difficulties, we found that he needed actually more structure and more details to help him stay on track. And another great thing you can do is, rather than just listing it with the times, you could do, like, for instance, in a Google Calendar or in an Excel sheet, you can actually put little blocks of time, make them different colors, and put what they're supposed to do in that block of time. So they don't have to see this huge list on the left-hand side of actual exact times. Now, I know also my student with ADHD will not follow this perfectly. What I want them to do is to put this into their schedules, meaning into their online calendars, Google calendars, with alarms to remind them what time to move to the next shift, to the next class. They can also have actual timers. They can use their phone to set an hour. They can say, okay, I have a 10-minute break. I'm going to put 10 minutes on my, if they have their phone in their room. If not, you can always do it on the laptop as well. There are timers on the laptops through online. Then you say, okay, I'm going to set 10 minutes on my laptop. Once the 10 minutes is up, I go to do my next homework, business algebra or next learning. Also, physically writing it down on paper, poster board, or whiteboard. So having that schedule visual is very important. And as I talked also about online calendars, if they are a good regulator with their phones can also be the reminder telling them when to move on to the next thing. They can have it be audio, so they don't even have to have the screen up. It can be turned over and just the audio alarm goes off. Also, watches. Some of my students have different types of electronic watches that they can also schedule in to vibrate for them or to ping them when they're supposed to move on to the next activity. So this is an example for a junior in or senior in high school. So that's at that higher level. Now let's look at self-directed learning for a middle schooler. So there's still times listed there, but it's more simple. So it might be, okay, for like an hour and a half, I'm going to work on my math, or an hour, I'm going to work on my math. And I'm going to go, this is again, self-directed learning where there's not online streaming available. So I'm going to go through the homework my teacher gave me. I'm going to go through my math book. I'm going to go through the videos that they gave me, and I'm going to do that for an hour and a half. And a middle school student most likely will need a parent to help let them know, if they're not already using timers themselves, to let them know, hey, time to move on. Now, I don't want the parent to always have to do that though. So, and also I know many parents are also working right now at home as well, which is very challenging. So this is a great time to help your student, if they're not already doing it, getting used to using a timer. It could be a digital timer, it could be a kitchen timer, it could be, again, on their laptop, on their iPad timer, where they set it to move on to the next thing. And also, again, having the schedule visually up in front of them is very helpful. Now, I also put on there about pre-scheduled mini breaks. So in, let's say, an hour and a half, let's say that student's doing math an hour and a half in the morning with themselves. An hour and a half is very long time for a student with ADHD and EF difficulties to sit there and to be focused the entire time. So what I recommend is that they take mini breaks. So it could be when they need a break, yes. It could be, I'm feeling like I need a break. I'm going to take a 3-minute break. I'm going to put on my timer to tell me that the 3 minutes is up. Or I'm going to go out and say hi to mom and dad, and then I'm going to come back in, and that's my break. Or you could have pre-scheduled breaks where that student, every 30 minutes or 40 minutes, a timer will go off of, it's time for a break now, stand up, walk around, stretch, go get some water, go say hi to somebody outside of your room, go play with the dog or cat, go for a walk around the house before we come back for the next 30 minutes. So that's chunking time within that hour and a half time. And those are great ways for students to learn to do that, especially students with ADHD. It really helps them remain focused longer because they're taking breaks when they need them, which lets them keep their attention longer in duration. So that can be really helpful as well. And then if you look, we have PE time. Very important for students right now that we really get some physical activity in there. That can happen. I've heard different parents taking their kids on a walk in the morning before school even starts, taking the dog for a walk in the morning. It could be during 2 to 3 o'clock on this example, that's physical activity time. And you have already things that they can do. It could be jumping jacks. It could be running around the block. It could be doing any kind of obstacles. Some families have told me that they're doing family Olympics, where they have different obstacles that their child can do. And once they get through that physical obstacle, they get to mark it off and get a point. And by the end of the week, whoever has the most points will be able to get a reward. I also heard another story of some aunt who, for her nephew, said to the nephew, every time you go and run around the block, I'm going to put a point down, and then by the end of the week, or the amount of points you have, I'm going to donate so much amount of money to your choice of charity. So he's earning points and earning money for his charity to do physical activity. Also, there's lots of online versions for kids that to keep them physical. And if you just even Google online physical, education or a quick routine, kids can also do that as well. So there are lots of options. There's jump roping. There's all different things to do for that physical education. And then even at the end of the day or during their own break time, doing something else outdoors, just walking around outdoors that's what most of us are doing. And that's a really great physical activity. Some kids are skateboarding. Some kids are riding their bikes. So those are all really great physical education pieces. And if you see for the school day, at 3 o'clock, here we are we're doing PE, and now it's called after school time. This is our after school break. And then we're going to do, like we do normally, our homework. Any reading we have to do, any studying we have to do, any homework we have to do, just like we would if we were in school. And then we have dinner, and then you can have more free time, even quiet time if everybody needs some space, because I know that people are feeling kind of crowded. So definitely giving alone time and some quiet time for everybody is helpful. It can be at different times for everybody or all at the same time. And then getting ready for bed. And again, this is more of an example for a middle schooler. And now we'll move on to the next slide, which is more for an elementary student. So scheduling chunks of time. So as you see here, it's not perfectly every little bit scheduled, and you might even feel more comfortable using this kind of routine for your middle schooler, for the high schooler, and that's okay. I just wanted to give you different examples. So for the elementary student, morning to lunch is academic time. And academic time can include recess, fresh air time, PE breaks in between, and they'd be doing English, they would be doing math, they would be doing reading, they would be doing history. So any kind of academic time that, again, is self-directed if they're not having online streaming classes, that they would do. And then they would have lunchtime, and then after lunchtime, they could have social time. Social time, definitely connecting with other friends of theirs. I know some, for instance, another parent was telling me that some of the moms are getting together for their little ones who are 4 or 5 years old, younger than elementary, but who are getting together and doing reading circles together online, so that they can all feel like they're all together and hearing each other like they did when they were typically in school physically. Project time. Wow, have I heard some great projects that a lot of families are doing. This has inspired some families to plant a garden. And to be able to start that with their family and their kids and get their hands in the dirt and feel those green leaves and those seeds growing. Some families want to do projects on their own. Some students have their own passions, their own interests. Creative art projects are another great thing that really gets the mind to still be engaged, but yet not stressed out by the academic piece as much. And then doing physical time. So physical time definitely is important. I cannot stress that enough. We know that our kids with ADHD need to move. So any way that you can get them to move is a good thing. If you have a stationary bike at home, if you have a treadmill, for instance, or again, walking outdoors, getting fresh air is very important. And then even for the elementary kids, if there is homework, if they have any homework to do, they can do homework time. And if it works better for your child to do homework time right after lunch and use social time and project time and physical time for later, totally fine. You can adjust this for what makes sense for your child. And I really want to stress that you do what makes sense for your child. Every single student I see is an individual, is different. Not one child I see is exactly the same. So you know your child best, and please adjust these for your needs and your child's needs. And then they might have some free time. Yes, they can go online and do some video gaming if they're used to that, of course, within a certain amount of limited time, just like they would during school time. And then they would have dinner and then perhaps quiet time, winding down for sleep time. And the other piece I wanted to say there is please review the schedule with your youngsters, especially the elementary kids, daily until it becomes more of a routine for them. And of course, visually post it everywhere as well. You can use pictures to represent academic time, lunchtime, social time. It doesn't have to be in words. A lot of great schedules are done with pictures. So that's another option as well. And now for the kids who do have online streaming classes, if they have online streaming classes, then you use that online streaming class time as their academic day schedule. So I do have some students, for instance, that are doing online streaming for half the day. The teachers are teaching consolidated classes in maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes of time. And then the student has the rest of the day to work on the homework, for instance, and that is totally fine, and they should be doing that. With online streaming classes, it makes it easier that there's already a schedule in place, in that sense that the student is expected to be there online in front of that computer at a certain time, joining everybody online and engaging in learning during that time. And we can talk about some strategies that some students might need doing that. But that helps already give you a preset schedule of what the expectations are from, for instance, from 8 o'clock to 12:30, or from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock if it goes the entire day. In the open periods, many of my students have open periods during the day that they used for study hall originally. Definitely have them use that time like they would when they're at school. Do study hall, do homework during that time. Or they do PE, recess, again, physical activity, recess, connecting with people, social time, maybe calling one of their friends for recess or for a break. That's their recess or break. And then having a timed amount of time for the recess or break if it's not already built into the online streaming scheduled day. And then after school, regular homework time. If they have any chores, doing any kind of chores around the house, then they have free time, social time, outdoor time. Again, I'm stressing the outdoor time because that is the difference, I would say, with doing homeschooling right now and being sheltered right now, is the ability to go to different places and go outside. So that's why I keep kind of stressing that, to get them outside and get some fresh air. If you have a backyard, you have a patio, have them go out there, do some stretches outside and breathe in some deep air. Again, if you don't, go walk around to parks, outdoor parks, of course, doing social distancing along the way, of course. And if you feel comfortable with that. So definitely taking into account that they still need all of those pieces of the same routines, the same things. Sorry, my computer keeps doing that. The same routines, the same important schedules that they had before still are in place and still need to happen. Of course, there's going to need to be some flexibility and adjustments. And right now it's very new to a lot of parents right now to be in this situation. It's uncharted territory for everyone. So there is going to be a learning curve with this. And I want you to understand that just having a schedule visually there, just making the schedule, talking it out, is not going to automatically just click everything perfectly for your child. It is going to take reinforcement. It is going to take some checking in. It is going to take some dialogue, some conversations around whether expectations are not being met, some, feedback to the child. So, that is the reality. I'd love to say that, schedules and routines will just click in and students will just, be on their way. But it's going to take some adjustment and, as I said, some reinforcement as well. So now let's move to ADHD and executive function online learning, meaning students with ADHD and executive functioning specifically. So if you see the side, it says put the phone away outside of the room. So this really applies to high schoolers, some middle schoolers as well, some grade schoolers. I don't think I have any grade schoolers that I work with that have phones, but that is possible. So the phone is an easy way. I heard a story actually from a parent that said they thought their child was doing online learning, in their bedroom and things, and they went to go check on them and the student was on the phone with their friend. So it's so easy with the phone to be there, to get distracted, to engage in something else. And so again, putting that phone outside and any other electronics that could be distracting. So if there are any video games inside the room, removing those so that they're non-distraction. Now, maybe your child will say, well, I can handle it, I'm fine. And maybe if they are a regulated child who can regulate themselves, maybe that is the case. However, there are many students that think they can and they struggle with it. And I'd rather like you to start off on the footing on this journey that these kids are on and we're all on. I'd rather like you to start off with expectations in place first and have those things removed than having it be a problem and then having to remove it later, because that will create more stress, more arguments between you and your child. So taking care of that and making this very clear that this is like a school day. This is a school day. It's not like, it is a school day. You still are expected to learn. Teachers are still giving you lessons. Teachers are still giving you homework. And your responsibility is to put in your best effort to focus as well as you can during this time, and to use strategies to help you if they need strategies, which I can show you a little bit later on some examples of that. So during academic time, during school day time, electronics that are non-academic go outside of the room. Or if they're old enough and they say they can handle it, okay, put it somewhere away from them, not right next to them. And again, invest in some timers so they don't use their phone, or tell them again to go online. There are tons of timers online that are free. Okay, some tips for students with ADHD and executive function difficulties. So visually check in on your student and your child at different times throughout the academic day to see that they're engaged. So I know this is very hard, especially for parents who are working right now at the same time. But if you can, in between meetings or in between things you're doing, just go take a quick look, check in, and even let them know you're checking in sometimes if you think that's appropriate, or if you don't want to, just check in and make sure they're engaged. And if they're not, help them readjust. I don't want to make it a punitive thing. We know that students with ADHD struggle with regulating their attention. Okay, we know this is part of their neural network. So this is going to be much more of a challenge, as we know, for students with ADHD who do not have people around them helping them stay in check, who do not have a structured environment, that's not their bedroom or their house, to keep them in check. They do not have the teacher physically standing in front of them to keep them in check. And we know even when they do have that, they struggle with attention issues and being able to focus when they want to focus and when they need to focus. It's not that they can never focus, but it's that they struggle with regulating, with getting their attention levels to do what they want it to do, what they need to do in the moment that they need to do it. So if you see your student not engaged, please do not approach it in a punitive way. We want to create a dialogue and collaboration around that. Say, hey, notice that you're kind of having a hard time paying attention, and you might be, or you're having a hard time focusing on the lesson right now. Do you think you might need a break for yourself, like a mini short break for yourself? Do you need to maybe stretch? Do you need to go get some water? Do we need to maybe remove the phone if we have it next to us? Giving them those options and strategies versus just punitive, hey, you need to pay attention, or you're not paying attention, oh, I caught you. That's not going to get that child to engage in better attentional behaviors. So this is a really important point that I hope everyone's hearing me on, that we want to work with our child to build good attentional behaviors versus feeling they have to hide it. So I have many students who at school, for instance, will get in trouble because they're not focused on the task at hand. And that only makes them want to hide more. What we want them to do, it's going to happen. It is going to happen that your brain is not going to be able to stay completely high level focus this entire time, 24/7 a day. Okay, so we know it's going to happen. But what I want you to do is to notice when it happens for yourself, to be self-aware and notice when that happens, and say to yourself, okay, I think I need to get back on task. And if you're having a hard time getting back on task or remembering what you were doing, look back at the computer screen to see hopefully what's online. Look back at your piece of paper that you were just looking at. Look back at your Post-it note that says what items you're trying to get done, and remind yourself. And also use strategies. Take a break where it's a good academic break. So let's get into that a little bit real quick. So good academic school break is like it would be at school, where it is doing something physical, it is socially interacting with someone, it is not going on video games, It is not just sitting there still in your seat and not moving. Kids need to move and fidget. They can also, which we can talk about a little bit later, have fidgets that are appropriate to help them pay attention. So good breaks are, I think I need a short, quick break, just like I would in school. I'm going to go get some water and come back. Or I'm going to stand up. And by the way, this is actually a positive about doing online learning from home. Kids can stand up. And standing up is not a bad thing when looking at the computer. We even have many desks for adults now that are, standing desks. So it's better for our circulation. It's better for our attention. It helps us stay awake more. So they can stand up if they're feeling like they're falling asleep or getting really having a hard time paying attention. Those are some great strategies to even do for themselves. And if they're really getting distracted, maybe they say, and this is the next level, which I wish kids could get to. It's hard to get them there, but hey, mom or dad, I'm having a hard time paying attention. I think I might need to have one of you sit next to me, or can I bring my stuff out into the communal area so that I can focus better? I mean, that's amazing when we have a student that can say that. So again, building that self-awareness for them and building that, what can we do about it and how do we get ourselves back on task as fast as we can after we notice we're off task? How can we bring it back? And that's a really important point that I really coach a lot of parents on and teachers as well. Prompting and putting up reminders for students, as I said, to stand up, take a stretch, break, use appropriate fidgets. So I will talk about fidgets now. Fidgets. So there are fidgets that help a student pay attention, and there are fidgets that will distract them. And I can tell you it varies for every student what those fidgets are that distract them versus the fidgets that work for them. And again, it comes down to that self-awareness and metacognition that you want to teach your child. So if they have like a rubber band or something and they're clicking it and it is helping them actually to pay attention to what's going on, great. If they have a rubber band and they're clicking it and they're paying more attention to the rubber band and they're kind of just getting more stimulated by that and they're not really paying attention to what's the task at hand, then that means that's not a good fidget for right now. And we want our kids to learn that. That is not a good fidget for myself right now. Do I need to put that away because it's not a good fidget? So if the fidget is something that's helping them, I do have students that draw. And some of my students actually do pay attention better in certain classes when they can draw a little, just doodle a little. Now, the difference is if they start drawing and doodling and their attention starts wandering or starts hyper-focusing on the doodling and they're not paying attention to the task at hand, that is not a good fidget in that moment and they should put it away. Also, students are receiving lots of information and directions. I literally have had parents forward me the information that many of my students' schools are forwarding to them. And I can tell you, it's a lot of information coming to these kids and also a lot of reading required. So many students with ADHD, LDs will need help going over that information and getting into the groove of what is expected from my school. What have they told me? Do I need to be checking my emails now? Many of my students are now getting lots of emails from their teachers because that's the direct communication way for teachers to communicate with them right now. And they typically do not check their email. So they miss information, they miss assignments. They didn't know that they were supposed to go check their email right now, or maybe they weren't told. However, it was not explicit enough for them. And they need somebody to tell them one-on-one, hey, look, you need to be checking your email. And if they have a trouble doing that, maybe mom or dad needs to support them in checking that email and making sense of the information that is coming in. So I have many students that love to read information and say they read it. And when I ask them, what did it mean? They can tell me maybe a sentence in terms of verbatim, just saying what it said, but they did not understand what it meant. And this happens with directions a lot of the time too, and many of my students with executive function difficulties too. So really checking in on them right now around this time, especially at the beginning of where we're at right now is a really good thing to do. So saying, you know, if teachers are sending you information and then you know that your kid's also getting information, saying, hey, are you checking your Edmodo? Are you checking your Schoology? Are you still doing those things? Because teachers are going to be posting and using that way to communicate with you. Are you checking your email? This is how teachers are going to be communicating with you. And you need to be up to date with that.
Surina?
Okay. Sure.
I have a question, and it came from somebody that's attending. They're just saying that right now their public school is not sending home very much online learning for their student to be doing. So, you know, maybe it's a half an hour. And so they would love some additional content and self-directed learning, maybe websites that they could utilize.
Sure. And I have that, you know, I don't have those completely written out for anyone. I do have at the end online tutoring programs that are doing online streaming and one-on-one. And also many of the resources I'm going to share with you that are online, they have places to go to look for online assignments and things to do. So it's a very good question. I know a lot of parents are struggling with that.
I know it's all just unfolding.
And that's almost that's a very good point, and that's almost a whole nother talk.
Sure. So I'll just let you know, when we had planned for this to be 30 minutes. We're 8 minutes from an hour. So
my gosh, see, I talk
so we
too
want
much.
To be really
I'm going to speed up. So thank you for checking in, and thank you for your questions, everyone. And at the end, there are some resources that could be helpful for you to find things to do with your child. And so that will be at the end. Encourage them to do office hours with their teachers if their teachers are holding any online office hours. If they're already working with any tutors or ed specialists, typically, definitely continue the sessions remotely. Make sure their assignments are actually getting into the teachers now that they're not going to be physically going to the teachers. How do they get the assignments to the teachers? Some students have not had to do that yet. Some students are used to that, but some students have not. And so helping them through that process and the steps that need to be taken is important. Keeping track of their homework, of course. Coach your children about what to do if they get stuck. This probably will happen for many students if they get stuck and they don't know what to do next. If it's a problem that they're working on, if it's a project they're working on, email the teacher, ask for clarification or support. That should be the number one thing we encourage our kids to do. That is just like self-advocating. They can contact a friend in class, and that's a really great thing to do. If it's a topic they're not understanding and they need more support, they can go online and look for a video on the topic. You know, there's Khan Academy, and actually that's a great thing to look up for people. There's lots of online videos about different topics on Khan Academy, Khan Academy, if you're not familiar with it. And they have a lot of great instructive videos on so many different topics that students can watch and learn. And of course, tell them to come to you, ask you for support as well. If a student is struggling with going online to YouTube video gaming during school time, encourage your student to use strategies to help themselves. So instead of you just putting the block on, if you can collaborate and help them also to do the block with you, that is the best, if you can. So these are different examples of what you can do. If they are getting distracted, you could go online and look each one of these things up to see how they work. Big concept here, parents must put their oxygen mask on before they put on their child. So this is the metaphor for many of my parents that I'm working with right now are definitely feeling overwhelmed, are definitely feeling a little lost, or if not a lot of lost, especially if their kids don't have any online learning happening at all through their school. So this is a time to also learn to take care of yourself as well during this time. And we're going to need to do that. Parents are going to need to do that. Otherwise, parenting is going to become that much harder if you're not filling up your own well as well. So please take note of that. And we hope to have different talks maybe from other psychologists at Morrissey Compton to talk about anxiety and pieces of how to do self-care and calming for yourself. Definitely being physical, definitely doing any kind of project that you enjoy. definitely talking to friends, talking to people, talking to other parents. Definitely use the parent community that is part of your school. Connect with them. All of you could even come up with ideas where one parent, one day a week, is kind of the monitor of the kids online, of doing homework or doing work. There's so many creative ways that parents can join together to help each other during this time, and to still connect as well. So lots of different ideas there. And then we'll get to resources. So these are really great online resources. I cannot stress that enough. They all have such useful information. Adhd magazine, I recommend that to every single one of my parents and clients. It has so many resources. It has things for learning on there. It will direct you towards places where to get videos for online learning, or projects or things. Understood.org, amazing resource as well. So much important information, not just around ADHD, but learning differences as well, and executive function. Adhd has things on learning differences as well, but it's really great for ADHD and executive function differences. I really get great material from them. The Child Mind Institute, it's actually located back in New York, and they have great resources for parents around anxiety, around helping their kids during this time. Smart Kids Learning Disabilities is really great for those kids that are really twice exceptional, where they really are have more of that higher intellect in some areas, but then have differences or deficits in other areas. And they have actual, I did look recently, they did have online videos and online assignments and things for kids. Dr. Robert Brooks is a world-renowned resiliency psychologist. I subscribe to his work. I've also seen his work many times and his talks, and he has some great advice for parents on there, and great advice to build resiliency in your kids through this process and for yourself as well. So these are all really great resources, and I believe that I'm going to give Marley my slides after this, so you guys can also have access to these information. So if you don't have time to get it down, do not worry. We will be sending the slides out. And then the last part is online tutoring. So if it is a possibility that you're able to obtain an online tutor during this process, or groups, many people are doing groups, you can come through us, Morrissey Compton Educational Center. Our psychologists and educational specialists are available to continue working with clients online. I know that some different reading specialists are maybe thinking about online groups. There's definitely still support out there through online platform. Tutor Corps, I've been able to be in touch with them. They have a whole plethora of tutors who are used to doing online teaching tutoring, if not school. They even have Pacific Preparatory School, which is online. And they take different students and teach different subjects to them. So they're also another great resource to reach out to and see if they're a possibility to partner with as well. And I just wanted to make sure you have our contact information, definitely for Parents Helping Parents as well, which is such a great organization, and Morrissey Compton has had opportunity to partner with many times. And there's their contact information and their website as well, www.php.com. So many great resources. And I know Marley can speak more to that. And then, of course, Morrissey Compton Educational Center, where we have psychologists and educational specialists there to support you during this time. And we all are wanting to support parents and students during this time. We're all ready to do that. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Surina.
I think we just got in the hour mark. I apologize. Yeah, I'm a long talker, everybody.
Let me just wrap up for everybody. Okay, so I'm sure we all appreciate our classroom teachers at this point, or will by the end of probably at least a week. So in closing, you can still, PHP is still open. You can call, you can email us. Please don't hesitate. It's a great time to call and brainstorm with one of our education specialists. We're quickly turning our in-person trainings into online, so check our website for what's coming up. We also have in this collaboration with Morrissey Compton, at least 2 more webinars. We're quickly adding additional ones, but next Tuesday, the 24th, from 12 to 1, we're doing one on dyslexia and reading difficulties for elementary school kids. So if that's an issue that your family is dealing with, dial in for that, or whatever, check in for that. And then on Thursday, April 30th, Dr. Basho will be back. She'll be presenting specifically on executive functioning, what's to know for those with LD and ADHD. Okay, I think that's it from us. Thank you so much for everybody for attending.
Thank you.
I can't remember if I did a poll.
And also just to let audience members know, I am available for individual
Just
consult.
launching an online poll, and I'm asking if everybody would just kind of answer back anonymously whether you were able to learn something you think you'll be able to put into practice. That'll help us with future content. Thank you. Okay, Surina, did you want to say one other?
Oh, I was just saying that you know, I do have a full caseload right now. However, I am available for individual consultations. So if you are interested in that, you can email me, and my email is on the slides as well. I believe at the end here as well, and at the beginning of the slides. So please, you know, I can also be a resource for individualization and thinking through things to support your family during this time in your child's learning and executive functioning and ADHD. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to end the polling, and thank you, and have a great day, and check back with us.